Hello, 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 everyone. Come on in. Give everybody a chance to get in and get situated. That way we can get going. Marcel, hello, morning. How are you? Thank you for coming in. I appreciate you. Gonna give everyone a chance to get past the ads and come on in. Got a pretty good topic today. I think it's fitting for the season, where a lot of us is just starting to kick off the growing season. Experimental Gardener, hello, how are you? Thank you for coming in. I appreciate you. I hope all's well with you. Melanie, the moderator, hello, how are you? Thank you for coming in. I appreciate you as well. We're going to let a couple of more come in, and then we're going to get into our topic. We're going to do about 30, 45 minutes. Talking about some common mistakes, not things that we really think about that might be a mistake, but things that will kind of help us out a little bit. Indiana Backyard Gardener, hello, how are you? Thank you for coming in. I appreciate you being here. Tree Owls, hello, thank you for being here. I appreciate you. I think you're new. Yes or no? Maybe not. But thank you for being here. Grand rising to you as well. Let's see. All right. So we're going to go ahead and start now. Today we'll talk about mistakes that we make in the garden. And some of us might not know this is a mistake. But it can become a problem for us. So some things are good and some things are not. Sit right here. I got my grandbaby today, and she's extra busy, but she told my mom, say hi, that she would be good today. So right on your paper. So we're going to get into it, because this year we want to make sure that we have the best growing season possible. That's the whole goal, is to make sure that we have a good growing season, that we don't get frustrated midway through the season, that we don't give up and not do it again next season. So if we can do a decent job this year, it's only going to get better and better and better. So there are just a few little tips and things that we have to be mindful of in order to have a pretty good growing season. Okay, I thought you was new. I appreciate you being here. I really do. Thank you for coming into the live. So, one of the number one mistakes that we make as gardeners, new and old, because just because you had a good year one year, the next year you might not have had such a good year. And the grandbaby is being distracting. So the next year you might not have such a good year. And you really don't know why. So these are the things that's going to help us kind of maintain and figure out why our years fluctuating from year to year differently. So one of the common mistakes is that we don't prepare our garden beds. So those are in raised garden beds or even containers or even in ground. There's a certain amount of preparation that you should be doing to get your garden and your soil ready for the growing season. A lot of us are trying to germinate our seeds and do our seeds over and over and over ahead of time. But there's things that we can do before we even start our seeds, because you don't want to jump the gun. You don't want to jump the gun too quick with your seeds. And then your seeds, your plants start to grow and you can't put them outside because you still got frost days. So there's some things and preparations that you can do on those nice days that we get. Like today in Michigan, we're at about 65 degrees. So these are some things that we can do and that we need to be mindful of. One of the things that we need to do is preparing our bed, preparing our soil, preparing our pots. Over the winter, snow has gotten in them. Over the fall, the rain. In the spring, the rain. So it's depleting the soil. It's leaching out your nutrients from your soil. We need to add more nutrients into the soil. We need to make sure that that soil is viable, and that soil is going to give us a good germination and a good growing season. Not just in the beginning, but throughout the whole season. And one of the ways we can do that, we spoke about it last week with composting and our leaf mulch, and we can prepare our beds with it. NJ Kelly Gardner and family, thank you for being here. I appreciate you. I really appreciate you being here. Thank you, NJ Kelly. So we can add our compost, our leaf mulch, and we can make our soil loose. If your soil is compacted in your garden beds or in your pots, you know, we need to loosen that up and make sure it's loose so that our roots and stuff can have room to grow, and fluff it up a little bit so that we'll have a good germination as well. Because if your soil is too compacted, it's just going to make things harder to sprout up out of it and roots to grow down in there. So those are things that we can prep while we're waiting for the last frost date to come if you are a northern gardener. If you are in the south, you probably already got your seeds in and probably already have started a lot of your growing. So that's one thing to keep in mind, is preparing your beds. Another thing to keep in mind is that mistake that we make is we leave out our soil amendments. And one of the soil amendments is conditioning in the soil so it will fluctuate. When the rain comes, the rain leaches out everything. It just pours. That's why if you have a great source of compost, if you have a worm bin that you're raising your own compost worms, these are good nutrients that you could just automatically add to your soil to get your soil back to a viable state. Jeanette Powles, hello, how are you? Good morning, or good afternoon, I should say. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you coming in. So these are things that we could do to prepare our soil as well. We talked about it last week. These are things you're going to have to implement into your garden. And it wouldn't be a bad idea to do it now if you haven't started growing yet. It wouldn't be such a bad idea. So these are things that we have to remember, because once April comes and all that rain that we get, it's going to deplete your soil. Your containers, all your nutrients is going to run right out of your container. Lazy Liz Life, hello, thank you for being here. Add lots of organic matter, absolutely, in the backyard gardening. That's what you have to do. And this is going to keep your garden thriving, because if you are a container gardener, it's a little bit different. It's a little more work. It's a little bit more complicated than being an in-ground gardener. And the complications is that everything that's you put in that soil through those holes at the bottom of the pot will eventually leach out when you water it, when it rains. It will leach out. So you have to make sure that you're constantly amending that soil and constantly put nutrients back in that soil. And you got to know when to do it. And that's the tricky part, when to do it. So if you are going organically, it's like with organic materials, you're less likely to burn up your plant than synthetic like fertilizers. You put too much, you'll burn your plant up. So keep that in mind as well. But we want to try to grow as organic as possible. That's the goal for me, and this goal that you all should be thinking about as well. Because with all these different synthetic fertilizers, we don't know what it is, and we don't know what it's doing to our body. So keep that in mind as well. Indiana Backyard Gardener says, attract the worms. The worms add nutrients. That is absolutely correct. Today's live was actually going to be about that, but I wind up changing it up a little bit. but the worms will add nutrients. If you stick the pot on the ground and you got holes in the pot, those worms will make it into your pot. So don't be so quick to be like, oh, it's worms in here. How did they get here? But if you have your pots elevated like I do, it's hard for the worms. They're not gonna crawl up the rock, get up in there and do their thing. But with raised beds, you should be able to attract those worms easily. If you pot on the ground, you should be able to attract those worms. And if you're doing an in-ground garden, of course, you'll be able to attract those worms. I never see worms here in Florida. It's so hot. Lazy Liz life. Yeah, but you know you can order worms as well. The red wigglers. You can Google them. Florida, I know you guys do a lot of fishing out there, so you probably got a lot of bait shops out there in Florida that you can go and get you some worms. Don't hesitate to bring the worms to you. They come in a little cup and put them in and put them out in your garden. Spread them out in your garden. So if you don't have them, you can bring some to you. Because I know y'all do a lot of fishing, so I know you got bait shops. They got worms. You get some earthworms. You get some red wigglers. And all type of worms that'll be great. And you should have them in your compost. They will attract. Worms will come. They will, if you got the right stuff out there, they will come. But some places, like you say, you don't see very many earthworms. I do know that is a fact. Okay? Another mistake that we make is that we plant sun-loving plants in shade. Like our tomatoes love sun. And sometimes we'll go and we'll plant them in a shady area, and then we wonder why, well, I wonder why my tomatoes didn't ever turn green, or why they didn't get very big. Because it's not getting enough sun. Same thing with your strawberries. They're sun-loving plants. So on the back of your seed package, it'll tell you the requirement. It might require full sun. It might require shade. So if you have a sun-loving plant, do not plant it in the shade. This is one of the mistakes that we've all made and that we will make. Let's see. Lazy Liz says I have containers, so I don't know how that would. Most of the containers are off the ground. Bring them to the container. Put them over in there. You know, they'll go down automatically in your soil, especially if you got some good soil. Put them over in there. So you can do that, Lazy Liz. Let's see. Got wood chips, and over the time, they will break down and feed your plants. Yes, they will start to decompose, and it's more so that they will get your soil, a better soil with more nutrients that's going to feed your plants. So that's absolutely a good direction that you're going in with those wood chips. Marcel, let's see. 3 hours. Worms freak my mom out, and she's watching me now. But tell your mom that they freak me out too. But I got some grandboys that love to play with them, so I'll be like, you know, come on and put them over in there. For me to be a gardener on the level that I garden, I don't like bugs. I ain't gonna tell you no story. I ain't gonna sit up here like I'm brave. So I understand that completely. Yep, Lazy Liz, definitely try that. Definitely try it. And it might not be a bad idea to invest in a worm compost bed. And that way you'll have all the nutrients right there, especially if you're a container gardener. You'll have all your natural nutrients right there, because you really don't have to go and buy all this stuff from the stores that they're marketing. All you have to do is have your resources right there in your own backyard. Organic matter, composting. And you don't have to have it in a big old pile area. You could put it in containers. You can have a kitchen composter. We talked about all of that is going to add to your soil, and that's what's going to make it. Let's see. What else we got? Planting out of season. Now is the time for your brassicas. Now is the time for your sugar snap peas. Terry Smith, hello, how are you? Thank you so much for coming in. I appreciate you being here. Now is the time for your sugar snap peas, your greens, your brassicas, all your leafy greens, your cool crop. This is a good time to start growing them because once it get hot, those things are going to start to bolt or try to go to seed on you. So planting out of season is a big mistake that we make. I see people trying to plant broccoli in the middle of the summer and it's 90 degrees. That's not going to work. That's not going to work. It's going to bolt on you real quick. So that's another mistake that we make, planting out of season. Not pruning your bushes or your trees, your fruit trees. You got to prune those things. If you got raspberry bushes, if you have blackberry bushes, those things have to be pruned. You have to know the difference in the canes that come up. Your old cane, primer cane. You got to know everything about that tree. Because if you don't trim off that old matter from the last season, because it's not going to fruit this season, or vice versa, you're going to be in trouble. So you got to know about pruning. You got to know how to get it out and how to identify it. So keep that in mind as well. When you're growing raspberries, when you're growing blackberries, if you're growing fruit trees. Golden State Gardener, hello, how are you? Thank you so much for being here. I don't know why I keep calling you Golden State. Garden State Gardener, hello, thank you for being here. I appreciate you. So we talked about the trimming of the bushes, trimming of your fruit trees. Prune that stuff. Cut it back. Now, one of the problems that we'll have is we hard prune at the wrong time. Hard pruning is when you have, let's say, a 12-foot tree and you want to bring it down to a 6-foot tree. That's a really hard prune. You can't do that in the middle of the summer. You risk the chance of killing that tree out because you're trimming too much off. I don't even recommend trimming trees in summer for 2 reasons. It's in full bloom. You can't really see what you're trimming because there's so many leaves on that tree. The best time to trim your tree, to me, is in the spring going into your summer before it even starts to bloom out or bud while the tree is still dormant. That way you can see exactly what you're doing. So a hard prune at the wrong time, it will kill your tree. It will, even on your bushes too. If you prune it too hard at the wrong time, it'll kill out your bushes. So keep that in mind too. Now this is one that's very interesting. And it's a very common mistake that we often make. And that is using weed killers at the wrong time. Now, if you got, because I'm shying away from weed killers. I don't use it at all in my backyard. I'll use it in my front yard. I don't use it in my backyard because of my garden and my bees. And certain stuff I'll use in the front yard, and I try to make it as organic as possible with the weed killers. You may be spraying one spot to get rid of weeds, but if you do that on the wrong day and rain is coming, guess what? That's going to leach and run off. It's going to go right into that plant. And when you wake up the next morning, the weed will be gone and the plant will be gone as well. So make sure that you don't spray at the wrong time for weed killers if you have to use weed killers. But the best way to kill a weed is that good old-fashioned way of bending over and pulling that weed up. And the wood chips will help with that as well. If you got a thick enough amount of wood chips down and you see a weed pop up through them wood chips, when you go to pull it up, you can pull it up with 2 fingers. It'll be so easy because it's loose through the wood chips. So keep that in mind as well. This is another thing that we often have a problem with, is planting invasive plants. Now, I know everybody in here either have or not knowing they're about to do it is plant an invasive plant. a plant that just takes over everything. You want it to contain it in one area, you just put it in the ground, and over the years it just been spread it through the whole garden. Mint is one of them. That's why I always put my mint in containers to contain the growth. Because you put that mint in the ground, it'll take off. I think another one is lemongrass, if you can grow that. Hey, Garden of Eden, hello, how are you? Thank you for coming in. I appreciate you. Lemongrass. Oh, you at the dentist. Ooh, okay. I hope all is well. That lemongrass is invasive. We even have some invasive plants that we can put out in our yard for beautification. That's non-vegetables, like the vinca vine. I didn't even realize I've always put my vinca vines inside my pots and let them vine out. Well, one year it vined out and touched the ground, and the next year I have to pull up. Now I'm constantly pulling up vinca vines out of my ground. So you have to be careful with invasive plants. You got to know what is invasive in your plants. Okay, so another one is trying to scare away pollinators with pesticides. Okay, you got lemongrass is also a mosquito repellent. It is, and it's good for it too. And I love lemongrass, but I have to grow it in containers to contain it. Scaring away pollinators with pesticides. When we put these pesticides down, because we don't want to see all these different bugs, you got to know what bugs are beneficial, and you got to know what bugs are not beneficial to you. And with these pesticides, you run the risk, and that's why I'm big on not using pesticides other than when I'm doing my trees for the different pests. But just spraying through the grass, no. And I be very careful when I spray my trees with dormant oil or fungicides. You run the risk of killing off your worms. You run the risk of killing off your grasshoppers. You run the risk of killing off your praying mantis, your ladybugs, your bees, and all of your butterflies. All of these things are very, 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 very beneficial to the garden. I'm going to give you that when I'm finished, okay? Are beneficial to the garden. So you have to be very careful when you're using pesticides. You got to pick your battle, and because this was what was for me. I had to pick my battle. If I'm going to be a gardener, I got to get used to the bugs. That's just a part of nature. You can't have one without the other. And some of these bugs are beneficial to your garden. You know, you go and you see all these tons of aphids and ants. Well, guess what? Other bugs will attack that problem for you. So do you want the aphids, or do you want the grasshoppers and the praying mantis jumping around in your garden? You got to figure it out. And once you figure out how they coexist and are beneficial to you, you'll be doing great. Butterflies are beautiful. They are pollinators. I can't think of the other one. It's right on the tip of my tongue. The butterflies, the bees, and then there's another one that I can't think of that's beneficial. And they're beautiful actually to see. I enjoy seeing them. I really enjoy seeing the bumblebees. Because they can make a noise, and it's so loud that you really can enjoy it. So that's another mistake that we make, scaring off the pollinators and trying to kill them off. You got to know that you're risking your chance of not having a bountiful harvest when you do that. So, ordering too many bulbs. Now, bulbs is unlike seeds. Bulbs, you got to be able to have a shelf life. You got to be able to put them in storm, whether they don't bloom or rot out and die. You order a whole bunch of bulbs and you only have room for a few. You got to either give them away, throw them away, or plant them somewhere else, find a place to plant them. So don't over order your bulbs. And if you do, know how to store them and where to store them so that you can keep them for the next year. Okay? That's another problem that we have. Planting trees too close to the house. I think we spoke of this a couple of weeks ago when we were doing dragonflies. That's it, Indiana Backyard Gardener. Thank you. Dragonflies, beautiful. Those are very beneficial, and I actually like seeing them. The dragonflies. They eat mosquitoes. Original Turtle, hello. Thank you for coming in. I appreciate you being here. It's so good to see you. So those are things also. Planting trees too close to the house. We talked to this about fruit tree growing. Sometimes with these fig trees, Original Turtle is a fig tree grower well in containers. But once you put those trees in the ground, you have to be careful not to put them too close to your foundation, because I don't know if it's a myth or not, but those tap roots are so strong they can cause problems. I know for a fact in your plumbing, if your plumbing system is up underground like it is here in Michigan, and they can cause problems with your overhead, your roofing, from those leaves being so wet all of the time when it rains. It will cause you problems on your roof. So you have to be careful where you plant your trees. That's why I said that last time, that first year you get them trees, put them in a container. That way you can figure out where you want to. You got a whole year to figure it out, because I got a whole orchard back there I got to dig up starting this week to move those trees. And I wish I would have did the first year in containers with them. So keep that in mind. Planting trees too close to the house is not a good idea, and that's a common mistake that we either all have made, maybe not close to the house but in the wrong spot, or that we have actually planted too close to the house. Let's see. Planting the same vegetables in the same spot year after year after year. You gotta rotate them. You gotta rotate that up from year after year. And I'm gonna tell y'all a little secret. I'm guilty at that. My sugar baby's been in the same in the same spot for the past 6 years. I haven't had any problems with them. But because the spot that they're in is convenient for me, because they vine out so much, I don't have to get to anything else trying to get past there. But tomatoes and stuff like that, you want to make sure that you switch those up. And also you want to make sure that anything that can cause any type of disease that you have problem, switch that stuff up. Switch it in the area. But when you're doing a container, you really don't have that problem like that. Let me see. I have a question in here. Thank you, Original Turtle, for smashing that like button. I appreciate you. Do you know how many melon plants you put in each 5-gallon container? I recommend that you do 1 plant in a 5-gallon container. If you have those totes lids, I've done the little totes too and drilled holes in them, and I put maybe 2 plants in them, because what's going to happen, they're going to vine out. The container is just the host, but they're going to actually vine out on the ground. If you're growing sugar babies, I know their vines get about 4 feet long, So you want to make sure you have room so you can spread them out. If you're doing a trellis or something, you want to make sure that you have room. But I've never been very successful in growing my watermelons on a trellis. But I have seen others be successful in it. And it's probably because I just let them roll out on the ground. How to Garden, hello. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you. James, hello. How are you? Thank you for the thumbs up. I appreciate you as well. So these are things, guys, that they're common mistakes that everyone make, and sometimes it's not that we make them because we don't know any better. We make them because they're just at that moment we're not really thinking, because we just want to get it done. But we have to keep these things in mind. Leaving out soil amendments. Did we talk about that already? Yes, we did. We talked about that. So that's the last one. Planting vegetables in the same place year after year. That's something you want to not do too often, especially with your vegetables. Um, who was that? Who mom is scared of worms? If you scared of worms, and I'm knock on wood, if you have ever seen a tomato hornworm up close and personal, that will freak you out. And I've been so blessed not to come across a tomato hornworm. I've seen them on videos in different people yards, and they showing them. Now that tomato hornworm for me might be a deal breaker, because I and they kind of camouflage themselves inside of the plant. So you think you touching a leaf, you might be touching. Oh my God, I just will fall out, and I'm real dramatic with stuff too. I just will probably just right on out in the garden and be like, take me down. Just throw the whole garden away. Those tomato hornworms are very ugly, Melanie. I agree. I've seen them and they are crazy big. Yes. Yes. And I watched one YouTuber, and she was a champ with it. She took them scissors and cut it in half and let it drop. I was like, oh, God, I thought something would have oozed out on it. But no, you have to be very, very careful in the garden, period. Because between slugs, snails, tomato hornworms, it ain't for the faint at heart. But it's possible. It's possible to get past those things. I just never had it. Now, when I start the urban garden, that's my biggest fear. I'm going to run into tomato hornworms over there. I just feel like I'm going to run into them. Probably a whole bunch of other stuff as well. So keep that in mind. I shut down my very first garden because of the tomato hornworm. They cleaned my plant out in a day. Oh, yeah. They will munch it down. Take all your leaves. You have a Charlie Brown tree for real with the tomato hornworms. They are very greedy. And they will sit there and just eat the whole plant up. Yeah, tomato hornworms are nothing to play with. Indiana Backyard Garden, there's a prodigy wasp that will lay an egg on the hornworm's back, the larvae, and eat the hornworm. Well, do the wasps look worse than a hornworm? Cause ooh, those hornworms are ugly. Oh my goodness. I mean, they're just not cute. It's got to be a face a mother can love, because they're just not cute at all. And I'm scared of them because they come in different sizes and just shapes. It's crazy. That I feel about the hornworm like I feel about the possum. The possum, some people, if you're you live in the country and you used to seeing that every day. It's not. I'm a city girl. I'm not used to seeing that every day. Not right up close on me. And a lot of times, one time we had one trellis in my gate where my honeysuckle bush was, and it was up under the honeysuckle bush just chilling. And I took the whole honeysuckle bush, I cut it all the way down, because I didn't want to be surprised with a possum. So those possums is another rodent that I can't get with. It's just hard. They just are not cute. Now and they have a really awful smell to them. But I think in the urban garden, I'm gonna have problems with possums. I'm probably gonna have problems with raccoons because I've seen them across there before. So, but in my backyard, ugh, I don't know. That makes my nerves bad. I'm scared of mice and rats. So I know a possum is a big deal breaker for me. But yeah, these are common mistakes that we make. I am so glad that you guys came and rocked with me today. I'm not going to hold you any longer. I'm thankful that my grandbaby was being super good today for Grandma while I did my live stream. I'm going to let her say hello to everybody. Say hi. Say hi.
Hi.
So anyway, we're going to get on out of here and we're going to go and start our day. Thank you so much for coming in. If you haven't smashed the like button, smash. If you haven't subscribed, please click that button, subscribe. Click the bell, turn on your notifications so that you will be notified of all the upcoming videos that's coming up. Also, there will be, it's almost time for me to get out in the garden and start my raised beds making, because I'm redoing all these raised beds that I got. And those are some of the things that I can do. The weather is super nice here for me to do it. So I appreciate you all again for coming in. Have a wonderful day and happy gardening, everybody. See you in the next video.